Who's excited for an impactful and powerful conversation, for some real talk?
All right, first things first, I am Savanna Hamilton. If you're not aware of who I am the Sideline reporter for the Toronto Raptors on Sportsnet. I'm honored to be back here hosting where we could connect and hear from obviously amazing women in the corporate world. Before we dive in, a round of applause and huge thank you to the Standard's generous founding partners, NBA Canada and MLSE, who are presenting partners of tonight's event. With their support, we are able to produce and host powerful events during the year, including this one. So round of applause. At the intersection of gender, race, and marketing, the Huddle was created to be a space where we could share our stories, talk through challenges, and celebrate our community. Our community. We are claiming this space. We could be ourselves here, and this evening we have three incredible panelists. One second, one more time. We can be ourselves here. Let's claim this space right now. One sec. Yeah, exactly. Let's go. Here we go. Starting with Angela White, who I've had the privilege of knowing for a few years now. Oh my goodness, it's been a little bit. Angela is the Senior Director of ED&I at MLSE. Angela is responsible for the oversight of MLSE's evolving ED&I community of practice, advancing the organization's commitment to creating equitable, diverse, and inclusive workplaces, respectful and reflective of its community and fans. Prior to this role, over her 18-year career with RBC, Angela held multiple sales leadership and strategy positions. She's responsible for the design and operational effectiveness of sales and service teams, and for implementing effective diversity strategies and programs that interrupt bias, elevate cultural competency, as well as cultivate belonging. In support of her strong commitment to ED&I, Angela is an active mentor devoting her time to empower and prepare young women of all backgrounds between Black, Indigenous, and people of color to navigate their career. So Angela, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, we have, at the far end, Renee Laforêt. She's the Senior Vice President of Transformation at Infrastructure Ontario. She's born and raised in Toronto. Renee's extensive 20-year career is driving change in transformation in collaboration with business partners in the government service delivery, and which includes as interim Chief Technical Officer and Deputy Chief Technology Officer at the City of Toronto. She has also held the key and leadership roles in health, social services, and enterprise-wide in IT strategy, policy, architecture for the province. Holy, that's a mouthful. Let's go. Renee is also passionate about making a difference in the lives as she leads coaches and services, including her role as a mentor for 3 young people in the Black Professionals in Technology Network and to a high school student in the Girls E-Mentorship Program. Elizabeth Burks. Hi Elizabeth. My first time meeting. This is such a pleasure. She is the former Vice President of TIFF and the founder of Known Equity. Entity. There we go. Elizabeth is renowned executive strategist in marketing and communications space. She is a global executive with over 18 years of cross-industry experience in marketing, strategy, branding for some of the world's multinational corporations, nonprofits, and public sector entities. Her career as a corporate leader and entrepreneur spans the U.S., Canada, EMEA, and APAC, where she has driven strategy, revenue growth, strategic reinvention, competitive advantage, and operational excellence for organizations. Woo, you go, girl. Elizabeth, she's a good one. That's a good one. Elizabeth holds the executive MBA of Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, as well as the Sulich School of Business. She is a proud mother and wife and a frequent public speaker and moderator and champion of youth and human rights and education. All right. I need some water just after that. Like, just hold on. All right, I told you guys that they are absolutely incredible. I'm honored to have all of you joining us this evening. If this is your first huddle, we break the conversation down into plays, kind of like basketball plays. Have you ever played any ball or watched any basketball? We will be covering it, so we're just going to jump right on in. The first play is called Collaborative Leadership, Defining Black Women in Power. Women are making strides in business, political organizations, and publicly traded boards. However, there's a strong, persistent lack of representation of women in leadership, particularly women of color. Surprise, surprise. According to an October 2023 report by McKinsey, women represent 1/4 of the C-suite, and for those who don't know, the CEO, CMO, CFOs, but women of color represent 1/16. This is unacceptable, as you can imagine. This is not cool. Without black women in senior leadership roles, the inheritance of leadership goes untapped to organizations, and organizations are worse for it. Where there is familiarity, there is likeness, and what I see exists in me. Your success is my success. That's why leadership is not only about leading, it's also about collaborating and partnerships. Black women have always, throughout history, whether it's in their homes, families, and communities, leadership is literally etched into our DNA with what permission to lead. Redefining leadership is crucial to creating pipelines for future advocacy for black women. And as you have all achieved senior levels of leadership in your respective careers and industries, where was there a point in time where you realized that you were ready for senior leadership, and what soft and hard skills did you discover you needed to get to that level? Renee, we're going to kick it off with you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. What a beautiful sight, eh? This is amazing. Thanks to the organizers for bringing this together. It's interesting, right? When you think about when is that moment when you think, I'm worthy, I'm enough, I can actually play in the same sandbox as everybody else around me that doesn't look like me. Most of my career being an only at most leadership tables. I'm sure that's a serious experience for many of us around the organization, around in this room. And I had started my career in private sector, in finance actually, moved into government, and then I got my first leadership opportunity as an assistant manager fairly early on in my career. I had a sponsor who kind of gave me a bit of an opportunity to leg up. And when it came to getting into a leadership role, I became a director within the first 10 or 12 years. And then I always had this vision. I wanted to be a chief information officer. For some reason, it's like that was the aspiration. I want to be a CIO. Oh, you can't hear me? Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you for telling me. I don't usually have that problem. Okay. Usually it's come on. Anyway, aspiration of being a chief information officer. And I spent almost 15 years, I think 14 and change, at the director level. And what I recognize, quite frankly, it's one thing to have the desire, the aspiration. It's another thing to actually present in a way that you be it, right? So I started to think of myself, before I got the job, okay, how would I be if I were to become a CIO? What would I need to do, and how would I need to show up? And for me, it was about three things. It was about, first of all, growth, recognizing there's always something to learn, right? Everything is for our growth. When you see other people that may not look like you or do look like you, and you're watching them in action, there's an opportunity to listen, learn, and figure out kind of, okay, that seems to work, that doesn't work. We've all had the situations where you've been in boardrooms and you're trying to talk and people aren't listening to you. That's fine. We all figure out how to manage all of that. The next one I would say is giving. So thinking about a way to give to yourself and of yourself, right? So for me, the skill around making sure I was taking care of myself in the process. I got to a certain stage in my career where, quite frankly, I burnt out because I was, again, trying to do you need to be twice as good because you're black and you're female trope that we all end up listening to sometimes too often. And so learning to give to yourself, so you're serving and leading from a place of a full cup that can help you then serve others makes a big difference. And then ultimately gaining, right? So how do you gain from those experiences that make you feel and grow and learn, but also, again, feeling worthy of being able to be at the table. So when it came to showing up for myself and for in different boardrooms, whether it was in a meeting, whether it was in an interview process, I went through the extra little mile, and I actually pulled together a 2-page document, whether I was asked for one or not, that spoke to my skills, my competencies, my aspirations, and then I had a bunch of quotations for people who had worked with me. Because I figure it's going to work a lot better for people to hear what other people might have to say about me than just myself talking about myself in an interview process. So that's a little tip I learned from somebody that I applied as well as I was going through the process of trying to get into the C-suite. So yep, spent some time as a chief information officer. We'll talk more about that later. And now I'm doing the role as a senior vice president of transformation. So.
Elizabeth.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out. It's a really beautiful room. An honor to be here. So, as stated, I've spent almost 20 years working across sectors, working across geographies, everywhere from startups to $250 billion companies. And I think when I think back on it, I was actually ready for leadership earlier than I realized. And I think it was because as a young Black woman, I didn't see anyone who looked like me, and there just wasn't that access between you and the C-suite, so you could realize, oh no, they're just as clueless as we are down here, only they've been clueless longer and they've waited it out, right? So there was this kind of allure that it felt like the C-suite had this just some it factor, and they just had something that I didn't. And then I think it was a matter of stopping. I think I just had a moment where I realized, kind of to this question, do you see us? I think I saw myself. And I think it became about understanding my identity and what I bring to the table, frankly, and recognizing that if I was in a room where I felt like I needed to contort myself to be at that table, that was a clear indication. If that was happening over a period of 6 months to a year, I was not at the right table anymore. So then I got comfortable with the idea of switching tables. I think that's really important for women, particularly women of color in your career. Just statistically, we move up quicker, we get those opportunities for promotion when we jump jobs. I think sometimes in organizations, people get used to us filling a role. They get used to us showing up in a certain way, and they don't allow that room for growth that we have over time, because there's not that always that kind of connection and that mentorship. I can really think, off the top of my head, maybe 5 times in my life, that someone kind of took me under their wing and said, you remind me of myself. Well, not a lot of us are going to get that from someone in the C-suite, particularly early in our career. And so for me, it was recognizing, okay, what do I bring to the table in an organization? What kinds of problems am I really great at solving? And then looking strategically at roles and opportunities in organizations and saying, they're trying to deal with a problem I would excel at solving. And then when you get in the org within that role, it was really understanding you've got to do the job, and you do have to be really good. You need to know yourself backwards and forwards, so you're not wasting mental bandwidth in that room around the boardroom table, like trying to get your facts and numbers together. You can really then do the very important work as a woman of color to sit and observe what's happening, to see, okay, when I said that, how did that person respond? Who are locking eyes with each other, which tells me they probably had a conversation before, who I need to have a follow-up conversation with after I leave this room because they're maybe not fully bought in. Like, that's the level of work we have to do to advance and to grow and to provide value to the organizations that we work for. And then ultimately it does come back to, as you were saying, really making room for yourself and making sure that what you're doing is feeding you and that it is aligned to who you are, so that when you do have those struggle days, it's purpose related. Like, those are the things that really allow you to push through it because it's for something bigger than, the title or the organization. And to, frankly, not even ever make the mistake in a career of defining yourself by your title and the organization you work for. I learned that very early. I worked in the music industry in Sony Music, and they laid off 60% of my team in one day. Thankfully, I was too junior. They weren't going to save any money on me, so so I got to stay. But I learned that very, very early, to root yourself in your identity, who you are, what you bring, and don't let anything make you question that. And if the table doesn't fit, if you have to hew your own out of wood, out of concrete, you do that.
Okay. Elizabeth, just before you jump in, Elizabeth, I just want to ask you real quick on that note. When do you know when it's time to switch tables? And is there any level of being proactive in switching tables?
Oh, you've got to be proactive. So one thing I've always done, before I start the first day of a job, I know what I want my next job to be. So I go in,
Okay.
and I'm starting to build out the areas of responsibility and build those mandates into my role so that when I go for that role I want, it's not, oh, I could do this. It's no, in my last role, I led this, but I also executed X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
which is indicative of the role I'm going for. You have to be very intentional and strategic. Very.
Okay, Angela, floor is yours.
So, just as my fellow panelists have said, this is amazing to be in a room with Black women and I think a few men, allies, hopefully. It's great to be here, so thank you to the Canadian Black Standard. You know, the question of when did I know I was ready for leadership, I'm gonna ask a question back to everyone to just think about. Have you ever had, during your career, had someone tell you how good you were at something and you didn't believe them? You kept denying it, right? Because imposter syndrome is really real for us Black women, and we let it keep us hostage a lot. And so I think to what Elizabeth has said, I think I was ready for leadership a long time ago, but I didn't have the courage early in my career to lean in the way I do now. And so I think for me, a long time ago, someone gave me a book called Leading Without a Title. It was really powerful because one of the things it taught me is leading or being in leadership or being a leader is not about a title. Right? I think it's ultimately we want to be promoted and advanced into senior levels in the organization, don't get me wrong. But I think if we make it just about a title, we might slow ourselves down. And so we really need to think about ourselves as being leaders now, early in your career. It's about the actions that you take. It's about the courage that you have to challenge the status quo, to really question with curiosity. All of that is building leadership skill that ultimately helps you and positions you for leadership roles later on. And it's just a perspective. But I think fast forward a number of years into my career, I think when I really knew, so lots of times in my career, people telling me how good I am at things and me not believing them. So that's one key message I want to leave. But there came a time in my career when enough was enough. It truly was. It was getting to be exhausting to hear the same answer over and over again as to why either me or colleagues, other Black women, were not ready for leadership roles. It was really void of any real thought. It was just knee-jerk reaction that leaders would just automatically say, the pipeline is not ready. How many people have heard that? The pipeline's not ready. This person didn't get the role because they just was not the right fit. And it got to a point in my career where, quite frankly, that was really becoming a lie. It was a lie, is what it was. But it was also a perfect excuse to do nothing. And so I got together with a colleague, and I'll never forget this moment. We got together in a room, another Black woman. This was not at MLSE. And we sat down and talked about the fact that we were tired of hearing this excuse. And we knew that there was a significant number of Black professionals ready now. We knew that. We worked with them each and every day. And we couldn't understand why this barrier was being put up. So we made a decision that we were going to take ownership of our own careers. And if I could leave anything with you today, is just to know that you own your own careers. No one else does. And so we made a decision to, and can you believe, I remember sitting in We literally used to go sit in closed conference rooms because we actually, I'll never forget this, we didn't know what people would think if they saw a group of black people getting together in a conference room. I mean, this is unbelievable to even think about. Anyway, long story short, we had the conversations, and we decided to start an initiative to really empower black professionals and to help the organization see us.
Hey.
And we called it Beacon. And a couple of years later, George Floyd dies. And let me just tell you, I mean, I think we all know where we were when that happened. But that was a pivotal moment for Beacon, because all of a sudden, everyone could see us. And it was an opportunity. We may not have liked what that catalyst for change was, or why it was happening, why the death of George Floyd or any black man had to happen for us to suddenly become relevant. But that's what happened, and Beacon was well poised to help the organization transform. And all of a sudden, this was not my day job. Beacon was not my full-time role. But that was the pivotal moment. That was suddenly the opportunity where everybody saw my capability as a leader. So what I would leave you with is, don't ever think it's the job you're doing today that's the thing that you're actually meant to do necessarily, or the thing that is ultimately going to transform you or have people see you. Sometimes it's that other thing, that side of the desk job that really you care about the most, that suddenly, because you're putting so much into it, so much of you is going into that work, that you are developing a leader that was always there, and suddenly you just feel empowered more than ever, and lean into that. And that was the moment when I decided that I was not going to use anyone else's barometer or anyone else's definition or timing of when I need to do what, how I should do it, and really just stick to my own standard.
Yeah,
The kin-
absolutely.